There comes a moment in a man's life when he realizes something unsettling. Most of the pressure he feels is not coming from enemies, competition, or circumstance. It is coming from his own lack of control. His emotions betray him. His impulses expose him. His inconsistency makes him predictable. And predictability is the gateway through which the world enters to manage, manipulate, and limit him. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this centuries ago, not in the modern motivational sense of be disciplined, but in the colder, more dangerous sense. If you cannot govern yourself absolutely, someone else will. There is no neutral ground. A man without discipline does not live freely, he lives by reaction. He responds to pressure, temptation, praise, fear, guilt, and urgency as they arise, and because of that, he can be steered. The system does not need to break you physically, it only needs to read you. Once your patterns are visible, your discipline weak, and your impulses exposed, control becomes effortless. You wake when told, you consume what is pushed, you chase what is placed in front of you, you stop when discomfort appears, and you call this normal life. Ruthless discipline is the act of ending that arrangement. Not tomorrow, not when conditions improve, not when motivation appears. Ruthless discipline begins the moment you stop negotiating with your own weakness. It is not about intensity, it is not about punishment, it is about certainty. A mind so governed that external forces cannot rush it, shame it, flatter it, or exhaust it into submission. Niccolò Machiavelli never praised discipline as a moral virtue, he praised it as a survival mechanism. He observed that those who rose were not the most talented, nor the most loved, nor the most passionate. They were the most consistent under pressure. They could endure boredom, isolation, criticism, and discomfort longer than others. That endurance created leverage. The first principle of ruthless discipline is silence. The undisciplined man explains himself constantly. He announces his intentions. He narrates his struggles. He seeks reassurance before action and validation during action. Every explanation is a leak. Every justification reveals internal instability. When you tell the world what you plan to do, you are subconsciously asking permission. When you complain publicly, you are advertising weakness. Ruthless discipline removes that impulse entirely. You stop speaking about what you are building. You stop arguing with people who cannot affect your outcome. You stop correcting misconceptions that do not matter. Silence becomes strategic, not passive. It protects your direction. It prevents interference. It allows you to fail privately, adjust quietly, and advance without resistance. Machiavelli wrote that men judge more by appearances than by reality, because everyone can see, but few can feel. Silence manipulates appearance without deception. When you do not speak, others project. They fill the gaps with their assumptions. They hesitate. They become cautious. And caution is power handed to you without confrontation. The disciplined man does not rush to be understood. He does not fear being misunderstood. He understands that clarity given too early is leverage lost. The second principle is sovereignty emotional. Most men are governed by how they feel in the moment. Fatigue decides whether they work. Desire decides whether they act. Frustration decides whether they speak. Fear decides whether they retreat. This is not freedom. This is servitude to internal states that change hourly. Ruthless discipline separates action from emotion. You do not wait to feel ready. You do not require motivation. You do not adjust standards based on mood. You execute because the task exists, not because you feel aligned with it. Over time, this creates something rare, reliability. And reliability creates fear in a world addicted to inconsistency. A man who performs only when inspired can be delayed. A man who performs regardless of internal state cannot be controlled by circumstance. His output is steady. His presence is stable. His reactions are measured. That stability unnerves those who rely on emotional volatility to influence others. Machiavelli understood that the greatest weakness a man can reveal is emotional predictability. Once others know what angers you, pleases you, or exhausts you, they can move you like a lever. Discipline removes the lever. You still feel, you simply no longer obey. The third principle is isolation by design. Most people remain controllable because they are constantly surrounded by noise, opinions, expectations, commentary, distraction. They are never alone long enough to hear their own thinking clearly. They borrow beliefs from the loudest voices nearby and mistake consensus for truth. Ruthless discipline creates deliberate distance. This does not mean hatred of others, it means selective access. You reduce social exposure that weakens focus. You limit conversations that reinforce comfort over growth. You withdraw from environments that reward stagnation, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. Machiavelli warned against mercenaries and unreliable allies because they dissolve under pressure. The same applies to mental alliances. If the people around you collapse at the first sign of difficulty, their presence will infect your resolve. Discipline requires solitude at intervals long enough to reset your internal compass. In isolation, there is nowhere to hide, no applause, no distraction, no emotional cushioning, just intention and execution. Most people avoid this because it reveals the truth about their habits. The disciplined man seeks it because it sharpens him. The fourth principle is consistency without explanation. Most men sabotage themselves, not through laziness, but through inconsistency disguised as flexibility. They adjust goals based on feedback. They pause when criticized. They accelerate when praised. Their direction changes depending on external response. Ruthless discipline locks direction internally. Once you decide a standard, you do not renegotiate it daily. You do not explain it. You do not defend it. You simply live it. This creates a psychological barrier others cannot cross. They realize persuasion no longer works, pressure no longer works, delay no longer works. Machiavelli observed that a ruler must not be seen wavering, not because wavering is immoral, but because it invites challenge. The same applies internally. If you argue with yourself about whether to maintain discipline, you have already lost ground. The disciplined man does not debate execution, he assumes it. The fifth principle is selective hardness. Ruthless discipline is not indiscriminate severity, it is targeted. You are strict where it matters and indifferent where it does not. You do not waste discipline on appearance or performance. You apply it to the few variables that govern outcome: time, energy, focus, and standards. You become unforgiving with wasted hours. You become intolerant of excuses. You eliminate habits that drain momentum. You stop giving second chances to behaviors that have already revealed their cost. Machiavelli warned that excessive mercy invites disorder. Excessive leniency towards yourself invites decay. Discipline does not mean constant suffering. It means refusing to lie to yourself about consequences. The sixth principle is resistance to urgency. Urgency is one of the most effective tools of control. Deadlines, emotional pressure, manufactured crises. The undisciplined man reacts immediately. He explains, he apologizes, he complies. He mistakes speed for responsibility. Ruthless discipline slows the response. You pause, you assess, you decide deliberately, not to frustrate others, but to retain control. The man who cannot be rushed becomes the one others must accommodate. Machiavelli wrote that time reveals all things. The disciplined man uses time as a weapon. He lets impulsive people expose themselves. He lets emotional pressure collapse on its own. He acts only when action creates advantage. Internal separation is the seventh principle. Most people try to be disciplined by force. They rely on willpower alone. This fails because willpower fluctuates. Ruthless discipline is identity-based. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and begin operating from, "This is who I am." A disciplined man does not see discipline as effort. He sees it as alignment. Breaking discipline feels unnatural, not difficult. This shift is gradual, but irreversible once established. Machiavelli understood that power is sustained not by constant effort, but by structure. When discipline becomes structure,
it no longer requires emotional fuel. It runs automatically. The final principle is indifference to approval. Control collapses when approval is no longer currency. As long as you need to be liked, you will be manageable. As long as praise affects your behavior, you will be steered. As long as criticism destabilizes you, you will hesitate. Ruthless discipline removes approval from the equation. You do not seek to offend, you simply do not prioritize reactions. Your satisfaction comes from adherence to your standard, not from external confirmation. This is the moment true freedom begins. Machiavelli did not teach men how to dominate others. He taught them how to stop being dominated. The man who governs himself completely does not need to control anyone else. His presence alone establishes terms. When discipline reaches this level, something changes in how the world treats you. People stop testing as often. They stop probing for weakness. They hesitate before applying pressure. Not because you threaten them, but because you no longer respond predictably. You become difficult to move. That is the real purpose of ruthless discipline. Not aesthetics, not admiration, not superiority. Immunity. Immunity from manipulation. Immunity from distraction. Immunity from emotional coercion. And once you have that, control becomes optional. You are no longer reacting to life, you are directing it. If this message resonated, do not consume it passively. Engage with it. Like the video to mark commitment. Share it with someone who is still being controlled by their own inconsistency. Comment with the principle that hit you hardest, and subscribe because this channel exists for those who choose control over comfort. The disciplined man cannot be controlled, and that is why the world fears him. What most people never realize is that once you reach a certain level of discipline, control attempts actually increase. The world does not stop testing you because you became strong. It tests you more precisely. The pressure becomes subtle. Instead of direct opposition, you encounter delays, guilt, flattery, distraction, and moral manipulation. This is where most disciplined men collapse without understanding why. They mistake reduced chaos for victory. They relax, and the system waits. Machiavelli warned that power is most vulnerable immediately after it is gained. Discipline follows the same rule. When you first establish control over your habits, your time, and your impulses, you feel relief. That relief is dangerous. It tempts you to soften standards, to reintroduce comfort, to reward yourself prematurely. Ruthless discipline does not reward progress with indulgence. It rewards progress with expansion of responsibility. The disciplined man does not ask, "What do I get now?" He asks, "What level must I now hold?" This is the eighth principle, escalation of standards. Most men fail because they set goals instead of standards. Goals end, standards remain. A goal can be achieved and abandoned,
A standard becomes non-negotiable identity. When discipline is goal-based, it dies at completion. When discipline is standard-based, it compounds. Machiavelli understood that a ruler who relaxes after securing power invites rebellion. Internally, rebellion appears as comfort, entitlement, and rationalization. You begin to tell yourself that you've earned rest, distraction, leniency, and slowly the edge dulls. Ruthless discipline escalates automatically. What was difficult becomes normal. What was normal becomes insufficient. This is not masochism, it is maintenance of advantage. The disciplined man raises the floor so regression becomes impossible. The ninth principle is control of appetite. Most control in society operates through appetite, hunger, desire, entertainment, sex, validation, novelty. The man who cannot regulate appetite is controllable at scale. This is why modern systems flood the environment with stimulation. A distracted man is a compliant man. Discipline begins by mastering denial without drama. You do not suppress desire, you subordinate it. You decide in advance which appetites are allowed access to your time and energy. Everything else is ignored, not resisted emotionally, ignored operationally. Machiavelli observed that men are enslaved by what they believe they need. The disciplined man reduces needs until manipulation becomes inefficient. If pleasure is rare, it cannot be used as bait. If validation is irrelevant, it cannot be weaponized. If comfort is optional, it cannot be leveraged. You become expensive to influence. The 10th principle is delayed response as dominance. Most people reveal their position immediately. They reply instantly. They react quickly. They correct misunderstandings in real time. Speed feels responsible, but speed often signals dependency. Discipline inserts delay deliberately. You do not respond until you decide. You do not clarify until it serves you. You do not explain unless explanation creates leverage. This delay destabilizes others because it removes predictability. They cannot read urgency. They cannot sense fear. They cannot tell whether you care. Machiavelli used time as a weapon. He understood that those who act too quickly expose weakness. Those who wait force others to reveal theirs. The disciplined man does not rush to close loops emotionally. He lets tension exist. He allows silence to do the work. Silence combined with consistency creates authority without assertion. The 11th principle is refusal to self-justify. Self-justification is one of the most common leaks of discipline. The moment you explain why you did something, you implicitly accept that someone else has the right to evaluate it. This places you in a subordinate position psychologically, even if the explanation is reasonable. Ruthless discipline eliminates the need to justify existence. You do not argue for your standards. You do not persuade others to understand your boundaries. You do not defend decisions that align with your code. You act, and the outcome speaks. Machiavelli noted that power weakens when it seeks approval. The disciplined man understands that explanation is not clarity, it is concession. He does not owe emotional transparency to anyone who does not share his mission. This does not make him hostile, it makes him inaccessible. The 12th principle is emotional invisibility. Being emotionally expressive feels honest, but honesty without discretion is exposure. The disciplined man does not broadcast frustration, excitement, disappointment, or doubt, not because he lacks feeling, but because he understands that emotion is information. Information travels, and information is used. Machiavelli advised rulers to conceal fear, hesitation, and internal conflict. Modern psychology confirms this. Visible emotion invites intervention. If people know what moves you, they will move you. Emotional invisibility does not mean coldness, it means selectivity. You reveal internal states only to those who have earned access, and only when it serves alignment. To the rest of the world, you remain consistent, composed, and unreadable. This creates psychological distance. Distance creates respect. The 14th principle is disciplined under observation. Most men are disciplined only when unseen. They collapse when watched. Their behavior shifts when an audience appears. This reveals that their discipline is performative, not internalized. Ruthless discipline does not change under scrutiny. Whether praised or ignored, observed or isolated, the behavior remains identical. This consistency breaks social conditioning. People expect shifts. When none appear, they stop attempting influence. Machiavelli warned that a ruler must appear consistent even when circumstances change. Inconsistency invites challenge. Internally, consistency under observation builds something rare, trust in oneself. You begin to know that no matter what the environment, you will not betray your standard. This self-trust becomes unshakable confidence. The 14th principle is boredom tolerance. Most men fail not from difficulty, but from boredom. They abandon routines because they no longer feel stimulating. The system exploits this by offering constant novelty. Discipline collapses not because the task is hard, but because it is repetitive. Ruthless discipline trains boredom as a skill. You learn to work without stimulation, to train without excitement, to execute without emotional reward.
This makes you immune to distraction. While others seek dopamine, you build results. Machiavelli understood endurance better than enthusiasm. He studied empires that fell not from invasion, but from decay caused by comfort. Boredom tolerance preserves momentum when motivation disappears. The man who can endure monotony controls outcomes. The 15th principle is self-surveillance. Most people outsource discipline to external systems, deadlines, accountability partners, motivation. This fails because once external pressure disappears, behavior collapses. Ruthless discipline installs internal surveillance. You observe your own behavior without sentiment. You notice slippage immediately. You correct without negotiation. You do not excuse patterns. You track inputs and outputs with precision. Machiavelli believed a ruler must know his own weaknesses better than his enemies do. The disciplined man treats himself as both ruler and subject. He audits behavior, removes inefficiency, and tightens structure continuously. This self-surveillance prevents decay before it becomes visible. The 16th principle is controlled deprivation. Comfort weakens discipline. Excess dulls edge. The disciplined man periodically removes comforts intentionally, not as punishment, but as calibration. Less sleep for a controlled period, fewer distractions, reduced indulgence, increased workload. This resets baseline tolerance. What once felt difficult becomes manageable. What once felt unbearable becomes irrelevant. Machiavelli advocated preparation during peace. Internally, controlled deprivation prepares you for pressure before pressure arrives. You do not wait for hardship to test discipline. You manufacture resilience. The 17th principle is the acceptance of being disliked. This is where most men fail permanently. They want discipline, but they want approval more. Ruthless discipline requires accepting social friction as collateral. People will misunderstand. They will project. They will accuse you of being cold, obsessive, arrogant, or distant. This is unavoidable. Machiavelli was explicit. The desire to be loved is the most dangerous weakness of leadership. Love is conditional. Respect, built on consistency and boundaries, endures. The disciplined man does not seek to be liked, he seeks to be immovable. When you stop adjusting behavior to maintain comfort for others, manipulation collapses. You become free. At this point, discipline reaches its final form, inevitability. Your actions are no longer impressive, they are expected. Your consistency becomes boring to observers. That boredom signals completion. You are no longer fighting weakness, you have replaced it. Machiavelli understood that true power is quiet. It does not announce itself, it does not threaten, it does not explain, it simply persists. A disciplined man is not dramatic, he is unavoidable, and that is why he cannot be controlled. Before you leave, understand this clearly. Ruthless discipline is not about domination of others, it is about sovereignty over self. A man who governs himself completely does not need to dominate. His presence alone defines the terms. If you reached this point, do not let this remain intellectual entertainment. Choose one principle, apply it immediately, not tomorrow, not gradually, today. Like the video if you are committing to this path. Share it with someone who still believes motivation is enough. Comment with the principle you will enforce first, and subscribe because this channel exists for those who choose control over comfort. Discipline this ruthless does one thing above all else. It makes you ungovernable.